Good morning, everybody. Sorry for the delay, but got some errands we had to run this morning. But just going to ask a question. Have you ever wondered why sometimes God doesn't show up when you want him to show up? Maybe you're going through a situation. Maybe you're hurting. Maybe you got a loss. Maybe there's something drastic that's going on in your life. And God just doesn't seem to show up on time, what we think is on time. God, I need you now. How many times did David say, God, I need you now? But how many times did David say, God always shows up on time? A lot of times we sing that song, he's an on-time God. Well, that means he shows up on his time. But why does it seem like sometimes we suffer so much before God shows up? I mean, he's loving. We know he's merciful. We know he's kind. We know he's patient, long-suffering. So why is it sometimes we have to go through so much suffering, so much loss, so much pain before God shows up? Is it his fault? Well, I think we know the answer to that. No, but there is a reason that he doesn't show up a lot of times when we think he ought to show up. I was listening to, Kim's right here beside me. Who's that pastor's name?
Skip Isaac.
Who?
Skip Isaac.
Okay, so he was talking the other morning about he had spoken with a shepherd when he was in Israel, and the shepherd explained to him, you know, how to take care of the flock and all. But the shepherd did make a statement that every now and then there's this really sweet grass that sheep love, and they'll go anywhere to get it. And sometimes when they get into the rocky regions, and there may be a cliff or something like that, and we've all seen the beautiful picture of Jesus reaching over the cliff to try to pull the sheep back up and all of that. That's a good idea, but it doesn't always work that way. But what the gentleman said is the sheep will go anywhere to eat this grass, and sometimes they'll jump down on a ledge, and it may be 15, 20 foot down, and you know, and they can't get back up, but they will eat that grass while they're there. And what the shepherd has to do, believe it or not, is he has to leave them there until they can eat up all that grass, and then finally they will get so weak, and they'll get so hungry, and they'll get so downtrodden that they can't do anything. Now you say, well, why would he allow them to do that? Because a lot of times, if he were to jump down there to try to rescue them when they still have their own strength, he says a lot of times what will happen is they'll jump off the cliff and then they're gone. He says, but if you allow them to come to the end of themselves, they have no more strength left. All they can do is lay there. Then the shepherd can climb down. He can cuddle them up or whatever he needs to do, and he can get them back up on top of the cliff or wherever it is. So they've got to come to the end of themselves. And my friends, how many times are we still trying to figure it out? How many times are we still trying to fix it? As long as we've got energy, as long as we've got an opinion, as long as we can go to somebody for advice, as long as we can try to figure it out, God can't do anything. And a lot of times he won't, because he's got to wait for us to come to the end of ourselves. So if you want to know sometimes why are we suffering so long, because we've got to come to the end of ourselves when we begin to realize God is the only thing, the only one who can help us. Because as long as we can try to figure it out in our own strength, that's the reason the Bible says, in my weakness, God is made strong. And that's a beautiful story, and it is a true story. That's what happens. The shepherds will tell you, as long as that sheep has got energy, you can't get down there. And you know that sweet grass is often sin. It's often our own ambitions. It's often our own will. It's often the things that we like often are not the things that are good for us. But even when we get in it, God is patient. He's still watching. He's still on the edge of that cliff. He's still checking on us. And then when we come to the end of ourselves, then God's able to climb down, lift us up, take us to safety, and nurture us back to health. And we learn to trust him. I hope you enjoyed this story. It is true. I hope this information will help you to understand. So a lot of times when we start going through suffering, knowing this, the best thing we can do is come to ourselves as quickly as possible, the end of ourselves, and put our trust in God fully. And when we do that, then God is ever more quicker to be able to help us. So it's going to depend on us more than it is him. He's going to wait and he's going to watch. But when we come to the end of ourself, then God can step in and help us. And unfortunately, for some of us, it takes longer than it does at others. Sometimes it happens quickly. Sometimes it may take a while. But one thing about it, as my wife said, there's one thing I know. Whatever God does, it's out of his love, his mercy, his grace, and his goodness. And God's going to be on time. And a lot of that has to do with us getting to the end of self. God bless you. Have an awesome day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.